Okay, I'd like to call to order the City of Camarillo Planning Commission special meeting for Tuesday, December 17, 2019. Mr. Secretary, please take roll.
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Vandermeulen,
Present.
Commissioner Espinosa,
Here.
Commissioner Talmadge,
Present.
Vice Chairman Murphy,
Here.
and Chairman Edsel.
Here. And then we'll please stand for the pledge to the flag with Mr. Espinosa leading us.
Bring over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Luis. Okay, moving on to item number 4 of tonight's agenda. It's to approve the minutes from our regular meeting of December 3rd, 2019. Are there any corrections from the commissioners?
Move to approve.
I didn't see any.
It's been moved by Mr. Espinosa and seconded by Beverly Vandermolen. Please vote. And those minutes are approved 5-0. Okay, then moving on to item number 9, the public comment portion. And this is a time where anybody that wants to speak on a non-agenda item, they can come forward now. Seeing nobody come forward, I'll close the public comment portion and then move right into our item number 6, the public hearing, the zoning ordinance amendment for the prohibition of hemp to the Camarillo Municipal Code. Mr. Vaca.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Edsel. Kane Toon, our city attorney, will be presenting the report on this item to the commission.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, Chair, members of the Planning Commission. Before you tonight for your review and recommendation is a proposed ordinance prohibiting the cultivation of hemp. The staff report covers most of it, so I'll provide just a brief summary. Historically, hemp cultivation has never been a permitted use within the city. The nuisance section of the municipal code prohibits uses of land related to federally controlled substances. Now, historically, this applied to hemp and cannabis, but as you know, cannabis became legal statewide, and the city had to update its cannabis regulations recently. Cannabis regulations specifically excluded hemp per state law, but so hemp remained subject to the nuisance sections of the municipal code. However, the federal government has recently taken hemp off its federally controlled substances list, and so there is a gray area regarding hemp. This ordinance essentially restates existing hemp regulations prior to this federal law update. The city and other jurisdictions have reportedly encountered incidents regarding hemp cultivation. These include odor nuisances. Some have described it as smelling like a rotten skunk, pests and insect infestations, death of hemp, and also certain allergic reactions related to hemp. With respect to the authority of the city to do this, the city has the authority to adopt temporary and permanent bans under its police powers and regulate against negative land uses. This is reiterated in the recent county council memo where they do discuss the police powers of local agencies such as the county and the city. So now before the Planning Commission, as part of this process, you may recommend, not recommend, or recommend with suggestions for modification this proposed ordinance to the City Council. Your role tonight is purely advisory. That concludes my presentation, and we are available for any questions.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any commissioner questions for? Yes, Mr. Talmadge.
Just a point of clarification. Our agenda package indicates that one of the actions being taken by the Planning Commission is adoption of a finding that the action taken tonight is exempt from CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act. And I just wanted to provide a bit of clarification on that. The action is being taken on an ordinance. It's not anything that comes from an ordinance per se. That the exemption is because we're taking action on an ordinance, not on something else. So it may seem unusual that we have an action that's exempt, but people have other opinions. Well, it's the action on the ordinance that we're taking tonight, and that's why it is exempt from CEQA. And I would ask the attorney if he has any comment to follow.
No, that's consistent with my understanding as well, Commissioner. And really, this proposed ordinance does nothing other than maintain the status quo. So there is going to be no change in conditions as a result of this recommendation or this ordinance.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy, any comments at this time?
Just a couple other clarifications. My understanding is that there is currently only one property that has cultivated hemp this year and is registered hemp cultivator. Is that correct, within the city limits?
Yes, within the city, that's correct.
Okay. And again, the second item is on the pest and insect infestations. There are other communities where that has been reported. However, there are none within the city of Camarillo or within the general area. Is that generally true?
None that we know of
None that we know of.
in
Okay, thank you.
Camarillo.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Mr. Espinosa at this time?
I had one question regarding the language that's in the resolution before us that pertained to, talked about the negative and land use-related impacts. It also included pests and insect infestations. I just wanted to clarify, I didn't know if anybody from the Ag Commissioner's office would be here today, but I understood that actually the properties of hemp and the oils in hemp were something that were actually helpful to reduce pests and so forth. So is that an accurate conclusion?
So
or-
we've heard that the actual plant has some natural properties that preclude some pests and insects, but we've also heard that that causes a higher rate of pests and insects in adjacent properties. So again, to answer back with what we indicated to Commissioner Murphy, we haven't received any direct complaints associated with pest or insect infestations within the city of Camarillo, but we are aware anecdotally that that is a problem associated with cultivation of industrial hemp.
Okay, yeah, because I just wanted to have that corrected if it was not an inaccurate conclusion about the effect of pests, whether it was helpful or impactful, and whether somebody would be able to address that. All right, thank you.
Yes, Ms. Vanderbilt?
One of the questions that I had was in the definition of cultivation, where it talks about planting, growing, harvesting, drying, curing, grading, trimming, processing, and manufacturing, that this would close out our chance if we currently wanted to, after this was approved, to go into either testing or any sort of manufacturing in the industrial areas with this product. Because it's my understanding that the answer I got was that if the city council does ever want to go in that direction, they can amend this ordinance and add it to it. So,
Yes, Commissioner, that's correct. We did interpret and define cultivation in a way that is similar to the way the state had defined cannabis, and it is meant to be broadly construed. But if there is a change later in the future where we want to revisit it, that doesn't
Yeah.
prevent the city from changing or amending this.
so that possibility will be there.
That's correct.
Thank you.
And I had one question for you, Mr. Kane. Is it, did I understand it correctly, when the ordinance was first written and adopted by the city, at that time it did include the exclusion of hemp and cannabis? And hemp was,
Commissioner, that's a great question. No, and I'm sorry if I was a little bit confusing on that point. The city's municipal code has a provision that basically prohibited any use related to federally controlled substances as a public nuisance, and because of that, land use approvals weren't given for those nuisances. So before, cannabis and hemp were both federally controlled substances, and as a result, we didn't approve those uses. But because there was a state law change legalizing cannabis, we had to make specific regulations for that use. And because now recently federal law did declassify hemp from a federally controlled substance, it just led to a gray area. So now there's no, so there is a need for clarification on which provision actually govern hemp.
okay, so it was prohibited under the land use, but not under the ordinance we have now on cannabis?
So let me summarize again what the city attorney is indicating and clarify if you need to, but prior to the legalization of cannabis, both cannabis and cultivation of industrial hemp were both prohibited under federal law as controlled substances. Then state law changed and permitted cannabis and actually required us to allow cultivation of cannabis at a limited number of 6 mature plants or 12 juvenile plants. But they never addressed, the state law never addressed cultivation of industrial hemp. We legalized cannabis to comply with state law, but we didn't address hemp because it was still a federally controlled substance. Well, recently, the determination under the federal government that it was a controlled substance has been changed. And so now it's allowed to be cultivated under the local police power of each jurisdiction. Because we didn't have strict clarification on this topic, we're introducing this ordinance tonight to prohibit cultivation of industrial hemp.
Okay, got it. Thank
Okay.
you. That helps.
And
Okay,
that,
any other comments or questions for staff?
I was just going to say, and the clarification for that came from the state bill and the assembly bill that were passed at the end of the, towards the end of the year, or in this year?
It was actually the federal 2018 Farm Bill. It was
Okay.
a federal law that changed the schedule
Farm
of what
Bill.
was federally controlled substance, so hemp is no longer on that list.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Okay, and then we're going to go into the public testimony part, and I kind of wanted to go over some ground rules first, that if anybody plans on speaking tonight, if they would get a blue card in the back so they can hand it to the recording secretary, and I have a number of them here so I can call on people as well. And then we're going to have the 3-minute timer going, and it'll tell you when that 3 minutes is up. And that way, when we have this many people, we can be sure that we get everybody heard tonight that wants to speak. And then in the third thing is, as far as, and it's great, and hopefully we have opinions on both sides, and if they're enthusiastic opinions, we ask you to kind of refrain from, clapping and hooting and hollering, because what we experience is we really want to hear both sides, and if someone gets too vocal, we find that sometimes it intimidates somebody from an opposite opinion from wanting to come forward, and we really want to hear everybody's opinion. So if you would respect that, I think the meeting will go smooth, and we'll get everything heard, and we'll get to hear, all sides, and which is real helpful in our deliberation. So with that being said, we'll open the public testimony, and then, do you want to give me those, Mr.? Yes, so the first card that I have here is Jean Tucker. If she'd come forward, please. And if you would just please state your name for the record, please. Yeah.
My name is Jean Tucker.
And you can pull that down if you want, yeah.
I live in Leisure Village, and I came here tonight, even though I know that the hemp field that borders Leisure Village on the other side of Conejo Creek is not in the city limits, is affecting our quality of life. And I came here to share that experience with you so that you would understand what it would be like, and perhaps others who hear this, to live next to a hemp field. Because of our position in Leisure Village, we're on the back side by Conejo Creek. The hemp fields are just on the other side of the creek. As you come down the grade, you see those fields there. When the prevailing breeze begins to blow, our beautiful Camarillo evening breeze begins to blow, and we all open our windows and get that heat out of the house, sit out on our patios and have our martini for the evening or whatever. And we prize that. We enjoy that about our life here. But since August and really into September, we've not been able to do that in Leisure Village, in parts of Leisure Village. It depends entirely on where you live. If you're close to a field and the wind is blowing the right direction, you're heavily impacted by it. People in the village have had nausea, vomiting. We've had, my neighbor across the street was at the emergency room with an asthma attack from it. The reason being that when the wind blows across a hemp plant, it causes the leaves to rub against each other, and a substance called the terpenes that are in the plant are released into the air. It has nothing to do with pollen at all. And when you inhale these, they are contained in a solid mass that you breathe in, and that affects your lungs and can affect your other allergies. Some people have allergies based on it. Those terpenes can blow up to a half a mile. They don't dissipate quickly. So if you are living close to a hemp field and the breeze is blowing in the right direction, you're going to be heavily affected by it. Okay, so I just wanted to share that experience with you and have you think about what would it be like to have hemp fields all around the city of Camarillo when our lovely breeze comes from the Oxnard Plain, which is now covered with hemp, blowing into our city. What is that going to do to our outlet mall? What is it going to do to the people who come here for recreation as well as the people who live here? And I totally support the ban on growing it within the city limits of Camarillo.
Thank you very much for your input.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Jamie, are we all set with a timer now? Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have
Chair,
a question.
Oh, you have a question of that speaker? Yeah.
Right. I'd like to gain a sense tonight for how long the odor issue exists. I think I heard August and September. Is it about a 2-month period? Is it 3 months? Is it longer? Go ahead, Jane. 3 months.
Chair,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Thank you.
Chair, if I may interrupt, just to preserve orderly process, I think we should leave it up to the public commenters to provide the testimony first, and maybe if we have some clarification questions afterwards.
At the end, okay.
Or,
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, Julianne, I think it's Julianne Seeley. Is that correct?
Hello, my name's Julianne Seeley, and I have been privileged to be a resident of Camarillo for the last 13 years, and I have told everybody for years that my absolute favorite thing about living here is the amazing weather that we have. I actually work in Calabasas. I come home in the summertime, and I open up all my windows and my slider, and we have an amazing breeze. The house cools off, just like the last woman said, and it's awesome. And then this happened, and the smell. And that was bad enough. But actually, since last August, I have been dealing with it health-wise. I have now been to the doctor 3 different times. It's causing an allergy. I have a constant, almost like a post-nasal drip. I'm now on my 3rd round of steroids for it because it is so miserable. Now, my doctor did say that, because I have no history of any kind of problems with this, he cannot absolutely say that this is what's causing it, but he said ever since you had the hemp fields that he has had a tremendous amount of patients who have come in with this problem or other allergy problems, that the common denominator is the hemp fields. And the sad part is, if this is allowed to continue, I can't see myself going through more than 1 more year of this kind of a health problem. I would have to leave the area only because it affects my health. So it's not just the smell, but it's affecting my health. And so I do look forward and pray that there is actually a ban made within the city, and eventually the county for unincorporated area will follow suit on that.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate your input. Okay, Drew Tillman.
Good evening. I didn't plan on speaking tonight, so I don't have notes, but I live in Somas, which is right next door. Our kids went to school in Camarillo, and the property right next door to us, it's a 19-acre nursery. They actually have plants inside now in violation of the moratorium that the county just enacted. The county's very slow to involve themselves in this. They did no due diligence, and it makes me happy to see cities like Camarillo, Moorpark, Ojai actually take the lead in this and do something, and I'm hoping the county will be embarrassed into following suit. If you want to see more testimony like you saw here from the first 2 people, go to the county supervisor's site and look at the November 19th meeting in Moorpark. It's on video, and you can get over 200 people were there. It was packed out the door, of horror stories from people who live by the fields in Tierra Rajada and the impact that had on the neighborhood there. People were sick. People couldn't come visit them because they would get sick. One woman was a cancer patient who was actually using the product, the CBD oil. She said she would rather not have that product and not have to deal with the smell and the problems from those fields. So it is a nuisance crop as far as being close to residential neighborhoods. If it's away from residential neighborhoods, I think most people don't have a problem with it, but we don't want to smell it and we don't want to have our health impacted by it. It doesn't matter what the harvest time is. I mean, would you ask anybody to not use their home for 2 weeks or a month? Is that fair? I don't think it is. And also, the crops are not planted at the same time, so there's an overlap of when these harvest periods take place, which extends that season of horrible odor. So I think you're doing the right thing, and I've seen your city manager at the meetings I've been to, and I think he's on the right page here. So I think an outright ban makes sense in the city, and I'm hoping the county will restrict it to that don't affect them. I've done some research on it just from when I found out the property next to us was going to grow hemp. And I know more about hemp now than these county individuals who have been doing nothing with this for years, okay? And you guys can get on the internet and you can find out a lot of information.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Alfredo Jomsky, I believe.
Good evening. I'm a 25-year resident of Camarillo. This is my second time in 25 years that I visited with the City Council and now with the Planning Commission. We have a problem, the elderly, the young, hemp. Now, what it says in there, las personas son la ciudad, means the people are the city. And we were here before hemp, and it's your job to maybe listen to us, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to mitigate the impact of hemp in the community. The city of Port of Hueneme will get $1,700,000 for the hemp they are cultivating over there. And I'm asking you, how much are we, the residents of Camarillo, going to lose in the value of the property and in the health of the elderly, the young? And you guys gonna get old sometimes, like me, 85. My wife faces an open heart surgery. You gotta do something about it. I'm not saying, and I'm not taking away from the farmers the right to cultivate, but I would have preferred to have the orchard, the citrus orchard that was in there, rather than the hemp, and debated with my wife for 3 months that there were no skunks in the neighborhood. It was the hemp across the street. I live at the end of Adolfo, and I've written to Kelly Long. I have visited with Ms. Ralston in the district. It's up to you. All you need to do, follow other cities. You need greenhouses, you need air scrubbers. You need to mitigate the problem and the distances from the neighborhoods. That's the item I want to bring up. A person called Hector Gonzalez published, I'm sorry, I'm out of time?
Yes.
He published, the farmers are going to get about $60,000 per acre, and that was a God-sent crop for the farmers. God sent, that's a fallacy.
All right.
God wouldn't do that to us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Debbie Bancroft?
Hi. I agree with everything everybody has said, but I do want to make one comment. Regardless of how close you live to the horrific odor of hemp growing, it doesn't affect just somebody that's a half a mile away. Anywhere the wind blows, you're going to smell it. And that smell takes my breath away to the point where I have shortness of breath, and I cannot enjoy going outside my house while that smell is around, which leads me to say that I am now having a nuisance and not enjoyable living in my household with this nuisance, which in turn is going to end up causing a lot of problems for the city with people starting to sue because we don't have our quiet enjoyment, which also falls under the nuisance of odor. And also it's going to affect the homes and the home values and people who are not going to want to move here when they hear how the smell is, or they drive around here and smell that horrific smell. I can spend maybe a half a minute outside before it takes my breath away and I'm panting before I can get to the front door of my house and go inside. I'm becoming homebound because of this odor. It's awful. I have problems with other odors also. It's not just that. Cigarettes do the same thing to me. If I'm close by and I can smell them, it closes everything up in my chest. So I don't care that it's being grown out of the city or in the city. It's being grown too close to families, too close to homes, too close for anybody to have to put up with this horrific smell. And that's all I want to say.
Great, thank you. Valerie Walker?
Good evening. My name is Valerie Walker, and I'm encouraging you to approve a local law banning industrial hemp in the city limits of Camarillo. Prior to purchasing a home in the city limits of Camarillo in 2017, I did extensive research on all the cities in Ventura County. I moved from Goleta, where the city exploded with permitted and illegal cannabis grows. Due to the health side effects I experienced, I could no longer live in the area. I was already a resident of Camarillo when the 2018 federal farm bill separated hemp from marijuana. To my great disappointment, Camarillo's conservative stance on cannabis and its priority for the public health and safety of the residents didn't carry over when considering hemp operations. I live in the Mission Oaks area. Whenever there is an onshore breeze during the growing and post-harvesting season, I suffer the same side effects I had when I lived in Goleta. On those days, I can't open my windows and doors and have to limit my time outdoors. Even on Thanksgiving Day, while driving to Simi Valley for dinner through Moore Park, I was overcome by the skunk-like smell. I didn't feel very thankful for the pungent odor. I understand this is a complicated issue. You have the ability to put the genie back in the bottle and enable the city to resume its public health and safety priority for the residents. That's the reason I purchased a home here. I hope that I don't regret it. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Okay, next I have Ingrid, is it Lanes? Hope I... Oh.
Hi, Ingrid Lonice.
Okay, it's close.
I live in Village at the Park and moved here in January of 2013 specifically because of the weather and climate in the area, and did a lot of research before I decided where I was going to move. We have offshore winds 85% of the time and a climate conducive to open windows 90% of the time. Having the wretched, sour stench associated with this type of plant within anything less than 5 miles from any populated area is truly unacceptable. I am all for commerce such that this agriculture can bring to Camarillo, especially during an economic hype cycle that it's currently in. But there needs to be some limits as to where it can be grown. There are plenty of fields out in wide open spaces, down Las Posas, down the 34, where, as you drive down toward PCH, that are far enough away so that when we have the offshore flow, it's going to dissipate before it gets to any populated area. I would like some type of zoning put into place so that we can keep our windows open and enjoy the fresh air and climate where we live. Oh, and just for the record, I have a field a half a mile from my house. So,
Great. Thank you. Okay, next I have Tom Long.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Tom Long. Just to start out, I am in favor of the ordinance for the prohibition of hemp. I've owned my house for 10 years. I also live in Village at the Park. I retired from the Navy, and I now call Camarillo home. We love living in Camarillo. I live here with my family. I've been stationed here twice, and this is where we wanted to settle. My son's graduated from the high school here, and he goes to Cal State Channel Islands. We love living here. But it's becoming intolerable because of the hemp, primarily because of the health effects, and it's severely affecting my wife. She was at the doctor's today, and the doctor was saying that there's been an explosion in health-related issues that she believes are related to the hemp farms. And she believes that my wife's migraines and sinus problems are related to hemp. Also, the stench is terrible, and not just where I live, but when if I drive to base, it's full of hemp fields. And I can't hold my breath that long or I'll pass out, but it just stinks. We're considering moving from Camarillo if we can't get this resolved. And it's really sad because we love this place. This has to be resolved. I know there's an argument for hemp because it brings in all the money. And I've been burned before by Camarillo and the city council because the money always seems to overrule the citizens. I don't know if anybody's property taxes are going down. Mine haven't. It keeps getting more crowded. Crime's increasing. Property values are going to be decreasing because of hemp. And our health issues are increasing. So the hemp crop is ruining Camarillo, quality of life in Camarillo. So I support the ordinance to prohibit the hemp cultivation. Camarillo is being destroyed by the hemp and its stench and the effects. So I ask you to do the right thing and save Camarillo by banning the hemp. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Okay, I have 3 of the pink cards, which are non-verbal public comment, and I thought maybe I ought to read them in the record. We have Terry Boganowitz, I think, if I didn't butcher that, and her comments are: Somas has a hemp grower on the corner of a residential street, Groves Place. They should not be so close to our homes. And then we have one from Drew Tillman, but he got up and spoke already. Anyway, and then Peter Finney says he's been a Camarillo resident since 1975. And I got a D in penmanship, and I'm having trouble reading. Sorry about that. Let's see. Please restrict hemp growing in Camarillo. And basically, it's just an opposition to it. So those are the non-verbal ones, and then I received another one from a speaker, maybe another 2. So next is Christina Dawson. What's the name? Look and see, I think, if I missed it, I apologize, but that's the only blue cards I have. Did I miss one, Joe? Okay, so go ahead. We'll check into that, and if not...
We'll check, but of course, she'll have an opportunity to speak regardless.
Yes. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Christina Dawson, and I am not for the ban of growing hemp. I do agree with a lot of the things that were said here tonight, but I believe that there is more pros than there is cons with cultivating hemp. I do believe that it should be far enough from schools and neighborhoods and homes so that the smell doesn't affect people. And I am also aware that the process needs to be renovated or updated because it was completely done wrong. The harvest was done completely wrong. The curing was done completely wrong. And that is one of the big reasons why the complaints that the people have behind me, why they have the complaints that they have. Because it's a new thing and we don't have history, we don't have education on. I'm talking about the actual farmers that actually did the harvesting and did the curing. They treated the marijuana fields like corn and actually tilled it with corn tillers, which literally ground it into the air, creating a much, probably 50 to 60% more stink and smell in the air just due to the way that it was harvested, completely improperly. And then after it was completely improperly harvested, literally ground up into the air, it was then left there just laying all over the fields for the wind to blow it and take it, and that is completely wrong also. It should have immediately been put into some sort of maybe like a bag or something that could contain the crystals, the terpenes from flying into the air and from flying everywhere. But it all went wrong initially with the harvest. You're not supposed to harvest medicinal marijuana like corn. It's not corn. It's nothing like corn. So that is one of the big reasons why the smell was much worse than it needed to be. There's going to be a learning curve. So I would say not to ban it, maybe to put some restrictions on it so that it's far enough from homes and from schools, but also modify the process so that it's being contained as much as possible.
Thank you very much for your input. Thanks. Yeah, we didn't find your blue card, but if you want to come forward and speak. Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know where your card went, but if you'd state your name for the record.
I'll fill out another one. Celine Burns, and I'm from Somas. And I concur with everything that everyone has said so far with their experiences living near hemp. I'm on Groves Place, and we have a nursery that was recently sold, 3900 Groves Place. It's right on the corner of the 118 and Groves Place. We're on the south side of the 118. And so it's really embedded in a residential neighborhood, this 19-acre property. The people who've purchased the property seem to be in a rush, in a real hurry to get their operation going. It was also brought to my attention that the license was issued to them prior to escrow closing. So we're not exactly sure how that happened. I'm a licensed broker in the state of California, and another woman in the neighborhood who heads our HOA is also a licensed real estate broker. So we're really concerned about all of the health aspects of hemp, but we're also concerned about the property values. You have to disclose on the TDS in the state of California, the transfer disclosure statement, that you are in proximity to a hemp operation. So if that's disclosed, it's going to have an effect on property values and the ability to sell our properties. If we've got this farm, it's a 19-acre plot that's right at the foot of our neighborhood. It's really embedded in the neighborhood. So I'm hoping that the city of Camarillo can talk to our representative who represents us in Somas, Linda Parks, and ask her to also follow along with what your decision ends up being to protect people's health and property values. That particular plot is also very close to the elementary school. It's within walking distance to the Somas Elementary, which from a health standpoint, is a concern for the children. The other thing I'm concerned about is this operation, they're putting it inside these plastic hoop buildings, and how do we know that it's only hemp plants that are in there? How do we know that every third plant isn't a cannabis or a marijuana plant? Who's monitoring and walking inside those hoops to see what exactly is growing in there, and that not every third or fourth plant is not a hemp plant. That's something that I'm concerned about. Another thing with regards to the lot at the foot of our neighborhood, the turn from the 118 onto Groves Place is quite a dangerous turn as it is. You're turning across the highway, and there's really not a lot of room for an industry to be operating there with trucks and farming equipment coming in and out of that turn. It's really hard for residents to make that turn as it is. So the impact of the industry right there in the neighborhood would be negative for us also.
All right, thank you for your input.
Thank you.
Okay, Molly Farah?
Hello, good evening. Molly Farah. I didn't prepare any notes. I just wanted to publicly say that the smell is really bad also, and I agree with everything that everybody else said. We moved and bought a home 4 years ago. We were living in Oak Park, and now we're down here. I don't think I see a single person that comes to visit us in Camarillo that doesn't mention the smell when they come down the hill to come hang out with us for a holiday or a party or something like that. I think, like, what the woman in pink was saying, like, I can actually agree with that. I don't think it's being harvested right. I think if there was a way to take the smell away, you know, people would be a lot happier. I don't know how that would be possible unless it was like greenhoused with air scrubbers and everything else. I personally have no problem with CBD products. I think they're great, but the smell is out of control. It makes my husband nauseous, and yeah, we don't like it. So that's it. Thank you.
Great, thanks for your input. Yeah, I don't have any more cards, but is there anybody else present that would like to speak on this agenda item? Yes.
I live in Newbury Park.
Yeah, if you'd please state your name for the record, I'm sorry.
My name is Sharon Kircher,
Okay.
and I live in Newbury Park. And our son lived, he goes to school at Cal State Channel Islands. And he lived in the neighborhood right there within the school district. And they planted the hemp fields there. I thought that that was City of Camarillo, and I had contacted the council members complaining about it. And then I learned that it was actually County of Ventura. There's, you know, it's a beautiful area. And he loved living there, and their goal was, when they graduated school, to buy a home in Camarillo. Then they planted the hemp, and the odor was so bad, he said he walked outside, he could not even breathe. He can't take his dog outside. Everyone is running their air conditioning, they're running their heating, they're not opening their windows. And so to me, the impact on the electrical grid, and then people are going to buy air cleaners and things like that to clean the air in their homes, and it's no longer going to be an out. What I did was I went down there and we moved them up to our house in Newbury Park. And then the ocean breezes came, and in the afternoons, I can no longer go outside and work outside because it is so bad in Newbury Park, and that's quite a distance. And so I'm coming to every meeting that I can and speaking about it. And my other concern is looking into it. There are so many funguses associated with the hemp plant. And currently, the cannabis industry has asked for a new listing of fungicides and pesticides and things to cover these areas. And they want an action from I didn't bring my notes, but they want an action so that they can go ahead and use additional fungicides, pesticides, biopesticides. They're currently already using it on the hemp fields because they know it's filled with really bad funguses. So when these people complain about allergies, it's not just the terpenes, it's not just the odor. And so that's my concern. And the people that are for the hemp industry, they come forward and they say, but it's so much better than other crops because there's nothing being used on it. But my feeling is overuse of the same repetitive biopesticide is only going to get into the soil and contaminate it. My other thing is they control the buds with nitrogen, high nitrogen use. So what's going to happen to our groundwater with that? It's a grass.
I said there's certainly a lot of families of skunks, but now I'm at the point where I'm probably going, as the woman before mentioned, going to have to get an air filtration system in my house. I have to keep, at the summer, I had to keep all the windows closed, the fall. It certainly wasn't what I anticipated moving here. And Jean said that several people on her block have sold their homes and moved. They came from Connecticut. And when they came here and they began to have problems with the hemp and the odor, they actually moved out of Leisure Village. They sold and left. So I think that older people are more vulnerable and susceptible to allergic conditions. And I know several people in Leisure Village who have COPD. One is a friend of mine, and I noticed that since all this started, she hasn't been out as much. During much of the time, she was running her air filtration system like a robo cop or something. It was tremendous. So anyway, that's what I have to say. I'm very concerned. My husband was even saying maybe we should move. And I don't want to do that. I moved from the smog to the hemp. So I don't know, where do you go? Maybe I should buy a place out in the middle, you know, off the coast on an island somewhere. I don't know.
Thank you for your input. Is it Vanna Patel? Did I pronounce that right?
Vishnu Patel.
Okay.
I'm a pharmacist in Camarillo, work for the Ralph drugstore. I had studied during my pharmacy school, like how chemical reaction and how body react. So when general, all the people saying it's a smell, it's actually smell with some chemical going into your brain or in your lungs, and body is responding, saying this chemical is not good for you. That's as a human being, we feel it's just a smell, but it's actually poison for you. There's two examples I can give you what poison and what is miracle. Like if somebody have low thyroid, and if you give them a thyroid pills, that's a miracle for them. If somebody is healthy adult, and if you give them a thyroid, they can have heart attack, they can have high blood pressure, and that same chemical, one person is miracle, but for general healthy person, it's a poison. The another example could be insulin. Insulin will be miracle drug, someone who have diabetes, which body does not control their insulin. But if somebody is giving insulin to the healthy adult, that could be poisonous. So when we comparing, we saying, yes, it is wonderful drug. It cannabis or CBD oil, that's all, that's correct. But when we talking about healthy community, that's all chemical are poison. Now you have to select it out. When it's farming around the town, that whole town is getting that chemical. Maybe very less percentage compared to someone who smoke or someone apply on their body. But there is some percentage going as a poison for all the healthy community. So now we need to treat healthy community for all the disease, or do we need to specify whoever have disease, let's treat them? Not put thyroid in the water and have whole Camarillo have thyroid. That is exactly what disease is. When it's going in the air and everybody breathing, it's nothing different than having poisonous chemical like thyroid. Yes, will be wonderful drug for 1% of community, but there's a 99% community getting poison inhale in their lungs. So make sure we do some chemical research, some advisory thing, and we taking care of healthy community. We're not here to treat disease community to their problem. And that's all I need to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak on this item? Yes. Yeah, if you'd come forward then. Yeah. Okay.
So for those people that have already spoken, I think the testimony is only open to new speakers. But we can address the question for the cultivation and the harvesting.
Okay. So is there anybody new that would like to speak? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public testimony. And then we get into commission discussion and recommendation. Or first, do you guys have any response?
I know there was one previous question. Are there any other questions from the commission? We can take them all now, if there are any.
Okay, thank you.
And I think I'd like to restate my question.
Okay.
So on the basis of all the testimony that I've heard, it is my understanding that the offensive odor exists for about 2 months. However, there are health issues that extend well beyond the 2-month period. There are also possible negative impacts on real estate values that who knows how long those go. Is that reasonable?
I think that's reasonable, but I also think depending on the receptor, there are some people that are more sensitive to the hemp and they feel effects through the entire growing season. And we understand from the county ag commissioner that there's potentially 2 growing seasons in our local climate, maybe even 3. And so the growing season is anywhere from 4 to 6 months and harvest is anywhere from 2 to 3 months.
I didn't know that. I thought that there was just one growing season. There's 2 to 3 growing seasons, did you say?
There's at least 2, a fall and a spring, and then there's potentially even a third. And then if it's indoor, it could be grown all the time.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Talmadge, do you have a comment?
General question. How much acreage are we talking about within the city of Camarillo that would be subject to growing hemp?
I wanted to ask about the existing 18-acre parcel. So they've received, they've registered with the Ag Commissioner's office, which is good for a year. How does this ordinance impact that particular grower going
So
forward?
they did obtain registration from the county ag commissioner, and once the crop has been harvested and completed, if this ordinance is effectuated, then they would be prohibited from cultivating industrial hemp on that property in the future within the city.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Ms. Vandermolen?
I don't have any new questions on this. Mine were pretty well resolved. But if I could, for those of us and those of you in Leisure Village, at the supervisors meeting last week, the owner of the property that is right in back of Leisure Village has said he will not plant there again next year. So that was from him. So I
That's
just
in
wanted
the
to let you know
county,
we'll
I
be
understand
putting
too,
that
right?
out.
So the ordinance wouldn't have had any effect on him anyway, right? Correct. Okay.
Yeah, that doesn't mean there won't be other places that have hemp that the breeze will come from, but some relief.
Okay, I had some comments. I don't know, to me, it's a couple-prong test to see this. One is the smell, the other is the health and safety of our community, and then there's a practical effect. And if it was just a smell test alone, it kind of concerns me because otherwise we would seem like we'd need an ordinance for farmers can't grow cabbage because it stinks when they harvest, that you couldn't grow onions and maybe can't fertilize with chicken manure anymore. And I think those are common smells in an ag community. So to me, the smell test is not a compelling argument to me personally, but then we go to the health and safety prong of the city's authority to enact an ordinance. And I can see under the cannabis, there's statistics that crime increases in areas where there's cannabis involved because people, steal it and you're dealing with people coming in with weapons and things during those fields. But I'm just wondering on hemp, do you have the same kind of thing? I saw the crime report that was provided to us in tonight's packet, and it looks like, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 incidents, and I'm not sure any of them are in Camarillo. It sounds like they're outside of Camarillo, and the hemp was from Oxnard Fields. And then, they would catch these suspects with bags of hemp that they stole. And I just kind of curious, if the police interviewed them, did they think they were stealing cannabis? Or?
Yes, and that has been an uptick in that form of crime as a result of the cultivation of industrial hemp. Criminals mistakenly think that it's cannabis and that it has the THC principles to be used for smoking for the effects associated with cannabis, and it doesn't, but they've been apprehended in fields trying to steal hemp.
Yeah, I just thought that the report there was...
Excuse me,
really
one moment. Sorry, Chairman, but there's a lot of noise coming from the audience, and I think it's appropriate to remind them to please be respectful, that it's time for the commission to have their own comments and questions answered.
Yeah. Yeah, please, if you would adhere to that, because we sat and listened to everybody's opinion and appreciated that input, so we're just making our comments on it now. So, and then the third prong of this is kind of the practical effect, I think, is if the county on their deliberation, they've been talking about having a buffer zone in the county, and do you know if that's gone through yet, or is that just...
No, it's something that they're analyzing, and we don't know specifically how wide or shallow the buffer will be, and we don't even know what land uses it'll be buffered from.
Because it seems currently that, the 18 acres we have, that at least some of the things I read as a complaint of the smell and stuff is, across the street, it's on county property that we have no jurisdiction over at all. So, but if the county enacts a buffer zone, then Camarillo not having the ordinance, it seems like there would be an island of trouble in our city now, where without their buffer zone, if we enacted the ordinance, it seems like it would really have no effect if all the smell's coming from outside the city that we don't have jurisdiction over.
I think that sounds reasonable. You're right.
So does the city have any feel on what the likelihood of the county implementing a
we
buffer
don't
zone?
know exactly what they can or will or won't do, obviously, because that's outside of our jurisdiction. But that's why we're taking what we feel is a very reasonable, balanced approach to address what we have on record received to be a nuisance issue for several of our residents and property owners in town, and that's why we're recommending the prohibition, because we can control that. And then I think it also hopefully would send a message if this is passed and recommended by the Planning Commission and supported by the City Council, that then we can go to the county and say, look, we think this is so important that we've prohibited it in our community, and we think you need to do the same surrounding our community for our citizens and our property owners.
Because it seemed like most of the testimony I heard is the impact was really from outside the city. So, and that's what I was just wondering, if we enact this ordinance, the good it'll do, you think, is it'll be influence on the county as opposed to...
Well, of course, it'll help us control the proliferation within the city of Camarillo, so we'd address it right away and nip it in the bud, so to speak. But then also it would send a message to the county that we're taking it very seriously, and it should send them a message that this is the desires and wishes of the citizens of Camarillo, which are also county citizens, and hopefully they'll follow suit.
And I don't know if it was said before, I know there was 18 acres that were under cultivation, but do you know what the maximum amount, if all eligible land planted, how much acreage would we have within the city limits?
Yeah, Mr. Mo's indicating approximately 1,000 acres within the balance of the city of Camarillo.
That would be eligible to grow if we didn't
That's
pass it?
currently under agricultural production of other crops.
Okay, I think those were the only comments I had. And is there any more commissioner comments?
Are we going to have an opportunity for like summary comments rather than just questions?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was doing, is my summary comments. So, yeah, if you have some, go ahead, Mr. Talmadge.
Yes. First off, I want to thank everyone for showing up tonight, and I want to thank those that did offer testimony to give us an idea of how you feel about this. So thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for your comments. I also pick up on three major issues of public health, public nuisance, and public safety. It's an interesting dilemma that we have, because technically, in accordance with the California laws and whatnot, it is legal to grow hemp. It is a permitted agricultural product. The question becomes, is that what we want within our city? In terms of the public health, the potential nuisance factor, and public safety that's related to health. And it's a very difficult thing to look at, and I appreciated the previous discussion about the city of Camarillo stepping forward and taking a position and saying, this, we recognize this is a legal crop to grow, but not necessarily the right thing for our citizens. It's somewhat akin to the old argument of the NIMBY, not in my backyard. That was very often the case in land use decisions, that it's okay, I'm here now, but I don't want anyone else to come in. It's not really that in my mind. I think we have a responsibility to look and to protect our citizens, and I think this ordinance goes a long way in helping protect our citizens and protect the quality of life that we all moved here for and that we enjoy as citizens of the Camarillo. I will make my vote at the time, but I just wanted to point out that it's a tough dilemma, that we do have something that is technically legal, but is it really the right thing we want within our city limits? And it is, we can only affect what is within our city limits. That's our charter, that's our business. What happens with the county, we can be another voice at some point in time with the county, and that may occur. But that's in the future. I can't predict that. All I know is what we have here tonight to make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Talmadge. Do you have any comments, Mr. Murphy?
Yes, I do. I agree that it appears to be a three issues here: the health, nuisance, and safety. I don't really buy into the issue of issues with the crop itself, with pest infestations and so forth. I do think that the odor is a major issue. I appreciate all the comments tonight. I think I learned a lot more about the health-related aspect that many of you are dealing with out there, and that's very meaningful to me. I'm surprised that there wasn't more of a voice from the agricultural side of this. It is an issue where we as citizens are looking to take away the profitability of, I think I heard over 1,000 acres of ag land that sits within the city that is eligible for this, and that's a major item. But I don't see a whole lot of opposition. I don't see much of anything from the agricultural side, except for the comments that were made about the harvesting of the product. I learned a little bit of that. Thank you for, I appreciate all of your comments tonight. I learned something. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Vandermolen?
A few things. First, Mr. Valka, could you, if I heard you right when we were talking about the pests, that they could have an adverse.
So that's anecdotal information that I've heard. I'm not a professional in that regard, but I've heard that cultivation of industrial hemp does have its own natural, it has like natural barriers to pests that other crops don't necessarily have because of the oils in the plant. but that it also does potentially increase the amount of pests and insects on adjacent crops.
Okay.
So that's anecdotal information I've heard.
Okay.
So take
I
it
just
for
wanted some
for that.
clarification on that.
I
And
have, though, heard in several instances that industrial hemp does have the oily properties that reduce the need for pesticides for that particular crop.
I have heard that also. Unfortunately, the majority of the hemp fields around us are on county land. So, for that, and especially like there's a large one on the south side of Pleasant Valley Road that is rather close to Village at the Park, going into Camarillo. So I would urge you all, to, if you haven't written to your county supervisors, Kelly Long or Linda Parks, whichever area you're in, keep writing, get other people to write to them. They are paying attention to them. I hear them when I listen to the supervisors' meetings. So they're paying attention to them. That's why they're pushing it forward and trying to get at least some buffer zones and things considered, which haven't gone through yet as far as I know. And one of the things that I heard when I was listening to the last supervisors meeting, one person that got up and spoke talked about, excuse me, the rights go with the property lines, and they change, from your property, then the next property starts, and that's a different set of rights. And so one of the things when they're talking about the odor and the winds and stuff is that all of these entities that cause that are coming, from a parcel, but then unfortunately they're blowing in the wind and coming all over everywhere else, and we can't just build a big glass wall to stop them. So then it becomes a distance issue or, whatever we can do to think about that. But unfortunately, like I say with this, we can take care of what's in the city, but we can't have any control over what's in the county. So that's where you need to really put a lot of your communication into, to the city council, city supervisors. So that's what I have tonight.
Mr. Espinosa?
Well, again, I want to thank and appreciate the public's attendance and participation tonight, and the comments given. It was very helpful to all of us. Honestly, one of the things I struggled with in considering this issue was, of course, you have an appreciation for, the farmer who wants to grow crops on his land, and he has the legal ability to do so now for this particular crop. So you had to kind of ask yourself, what's different about this crop versus other crops, and why should it be treated differently? And quite honestly, my first exposure was back in September, coming back from a trip up north, and I'm driving, we're driving between the I-5 and Piru, and I was like, whoa, what is that? And I look out, and there's acres and acres of this hemp growing. I was really stunned by the potency of what I was smelling. And so I totally understand people's complaints, and it wasn't something necessarily that, to my nose, was pleasant. But I really wanted to dig and find out, probably know more about hemp than I thought it was going to ever know. But they talked about the terpenes, and apparently this plant has more than almost anything else out there in terms of the number of terpenes, this aromatic organic compounds that you might smell when you pick up a stem of rosemary from your backyard, or pine tree, or anything else. But unfortunately, people aren't smelling roses, or not smelling pines. They're smelling something that to them is offensive. And I think that within the city and within, the quality of life issues and the general welfare, I think that it's totally appropriate at this point in time, because of the newness of this, and these complaints are not local, they're everywhere, that I think that we do have to, take measures to really protect that for the community, the public welfare, and the, nuisance matter. This is not an ordinary crop because of the potency of that. And that's really what it comes down to for me. So,
Okay, I think we call for resolution. You ready?
Zoning ordinance amendment adding chapter 19.57, prohibition of hemp cultivation to the Camarillo Municipal Code. This is resolution number PC 2019-15, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Camarillo recommending approval to the City Council of an ordinance adding Chapter 19.57 to the Camarillo Municipal Code regarding the prohibition of hemp cultivation.
I would move we waive full reading of the ordinance, and I would recommend approval of the resolution as stated.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Talmadge and seconded by Mr. Murphy. Please vote. And that carries 5-0. You want to? What's that? Do you want to take a short recess? Okay.
Yeah, it
Just a
might be
little
appropriate to have
break,
a
go down the hallway.
brief recess.
Okay, yeah. We're in recess. Okay, we're back in session from recess, and we're moving on to item number 7, the reorganization of the Planning Commission. And so, you have on that.
Yeah, organize and go through the process for the commission to select kind of a new makeup. And the first thing we'll do is we'll start by selecting a chair, and I'm going to give a quick overview on how this works. So what we'll do is we'll open nominations for chair of the Planning Commission. If there are multiple nominations, we will vote on the nominations in the order they were received. If there's only one nomination, a motion to close the nominations would then call for the election on the floor. So the other thing I wanted to point out is that if someone is nominated and they do not personally want to be the chair, they can speak up and indicate that they don't want to accept the nomination. Any questions?
No.
Okay, so are there any nominations for the office of chair?
I would like to nominate Tom Murphy as chair.
Okay. Are there any other nominations?
I move that we close nominations.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, please vote on the nomination of Tom Murphy for the office of chair. It didn't get counted, so we could redo it. So let's reset it.
I think he didn't vote for himself. No.
I didn't. I was hesitant to vote for myself.
No, do it. Go for it.
I'm going to change my vote.
So is it reset? Yeah. Okay, so please vote.
Revote there, Gene. Okay, 5, oh. What, are you voting yes for him or no? You can do an oral vote.
Cancel our votes.
We can reset it one more time. We'll reset it. Okay, so everyone hands off.
I'm sorry, it's my fault.
So we're going to have a vote on the nomination of Tom Murphy for the office of chair. So please vote.
A button-pushing exercise.
Didn't realize it would be so controversial.
Okay, so unanimous.
That's because Tom is very special.
That motion carries unanimously for Tom Murphy to be the chairperson. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So may I please accept any nominations for the office of vice chair?
I'd like to nominate Gene Talmadge for office of vice chair.
Are there any other nominations?
So I'll nominate Beverly Vandermeulen for vice chair.
Okay.
I move that we close nominations. Is that proper?
So if there's multiple nominations, we'll vote on the nominations in the order we'll receive. So we're closing on the 2. So we'll first vote now. We have a motion to close. Do we have a second? Before we do that?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Espinosa. So please vote first on the nomination of Gene Talmadge for the office of vice chair. Okay, so that motion passes 3-2, I'm assuming? That didn't come up. We can reset it. Let's reset it, please.
You could do oral vote.
Well, we'll just reset it. Okay, so please vote on the nomination for Gene Talmadge for the office of vice chair. Okay, so that motion passes 3-2, and Gene Talmadge is the vice chair. So next is the Architectural Review Committee. So we need 2 members to serve on the committee. So there isn't technically a chairperson, there's just 2 committee members. So are there any nominations for the committee?
I would like to nominate Beverly Vandermeulen to the committee.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other nominations?
I'll nominate Gene. Yeah, not Gene, excuse me. I apologize. I was going to nominate David Etzel.
Okay. So we have Beverly Vandermeulen nominated and David Etzel nominated. Are there any other nominations? Is there a motion to close nominations?
So move.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. So please vote on the nomination of Beverly Vandermeulen and David Edsel for the Office of Architectural Review Committee. That motion carries unanimously. Next, we have the Ordinance Committee. We also need 2 members to serve on this committee. They're not necessarily chair or vice chair, they're just 2 committee members. With that, I would invite nominations to serve on the Ordinance Committee.
I nominate Gene Talmadge and Luis Espinosa. We need 2 of them, right?
Correct. So far we have nominated Gene Talmadge and Luis Espinosa. Are there any other nominations? Do we have a motion to close nominations?
So moved.
A second?
I'll second.
So we have a motion to close nominations and a second. So please vote on the nomination of Gene Talmadge and Luis Espinosa for the Office of Ordinance Committee. That carries unanimously. So that concludes our reorganization. Thank you very much. With that, I'm going to actually take over item number 8, and I'm going to ask the new chairperson to help me in recognizing our outgoing chairman, David Edsel. He's done an excellent job. I know that he had some freshman planning commissioners come online this year, and he helped train them, which also really helped staff considerably with the effort of trying to get people up to speed. There's a significant learning curve, and you've all done a great job working together. I really appreciate everyone's commitment to the volunteerism, and it does start with the leadership that Dave Edsel provided, and I know I speak on behalf of staff that you're always a pleasure to work with, and that you've always been very supportive of staff, and it means a lot to us to know that you've led us in a really strong way that rooted in really a sense of charity and giving back to your community this past year. We really appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Joe. And I'd like to thank the staff for making us look good all the time, and also the fellow commissioners. Like you said, we had 3 freshmen this year, but it was a quick learning curve, and it was a pleasure working with all you guys. So I get to sit in the other chair now and pay attention, though, yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you, guys. All right.
And then if any of the other commissioners have any words to offer, outgoing Chairman Edsel, now would be appropriate time.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I really appreciated the help that he was always there to give, and the questions he answered, and the guidance I got. So I just thank you for all of that, and it made this year go by a lot easier.
Yeah, same here. He received more than a couple of phone calls from me throughout the year, and I really appreciate his experience and guidance, and made the job of transitioning into this role much easier. Thank you.
This year flew by, didn't it? Really went by.
Well, I'll jump on the bandwagon and say thank you very much, David, for your help and leadership, and also to Tom for his help and leadership, because having the 2 experienced ones help us kids out was very, very beneficial. And of course, the help we get from staff is superb, and I appreciate that as well. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Dave, I really appreciate your leadership as well. I echo everything that Joe said. And fellow commissioners here, Dave, I've seen you lead the kids. I have seen you lead seasoned veterans, and you do it with the same even-handedness, regardless of who is up here and who is out there. I really appreciate working with you, and it's a tough act to follow. And yeah, looking forward to another great year with you and my fellow commissioners.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, so you can lead us through the balance of the agenda, please, Chairman Murphy, starting with item number 9.
Yes, on item number 9, do we have a report?
So if you see in your packet, we provided the anticipated meeting dates for Planning Commission for 2020. Can't believe I'm actually saying that. 2020 is a few weeks away. But we've done so in putting together a calendar of meetings where we feel that it would preserve the City Council's opportunity for an order of review of any items that the Commission could take action on where the council may have a position that they would like to consider reviewing an application in the future. So we feel that these meeting dates are sufficient and that they follow our traditional calendar of the first and third Tuesdays of each month with a couple minor adjustments. We also highlighted the Planning Commission Academy in Sacramento coming up in March from the 4th to the 6th, and then later in the fall of 2020, the League of California Cities in Long Beach in October. So with that, we would actually call for a voice vote that we would note in the minutes if there's support for approving the 2020 Planning Commission meeting schedule.
All right. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the schedule, and does anyone have any comments?
Just for the
comment, recognize that March 3rd is our normal meeting date, but typically with the Planning Commissioners Academy and the fact that it's in Sacramento is going to require significant travel, we need to look at the March 3rd, whether or not we would have a meeting. Is that a decision that you would make at that time?
Yes, we typically like to leave it on calendar because usually for the Commission Academy, if you were to fly, for instance, we would fly you out in the morning, but we recognize that there's the hope that everyone's going to attend the Academy for that training opportunity. And so if we can adjust the schedule of meetings so that we don't necessarily meet on the 3rd, that's typically what we try to do. But we do like to start out the year with having that meeting on calendar in case we need it.
Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah.
That
And one point I have is I still have the 2019 calendar, so if maybe when I turn in the book tonight, if they'll put the new one in here. So thank you.
No problem.
Yeah.
Oh, I stand corrected. Thank you. I do have it.
All right. Are there any other comments on the schedule?
So if we could have a motion to support the calendar in a second, then we could have a voice vote and we'll note it in the minutes.
So move.
A second. Please vote by voice. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, it passes unanimously. Thank you.
All right. That brings us to item 10, Director's Report.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that, Chairman Murphy. We had a good meeting this evening. Significant amount of deliberation from the public, which indicates the seriousness with which we're facing this issue, addressing cultivation of industrial hemp. So I appreciate everyone's sensitivity to the topic and their respect to the community and listening to everyone and weighing the pros and cons that we heard from the public this evening and then making the decision. Thank you very much. You guys did a great job. I also, again, just want to reiterate that we have the Planning Commission Academy coming up in 2020, March 4th to the 6th. So if you could please look at your calendars and start to let staff know as soon as possible on availability. We'll try to make arrangements for that. And I would encourage all of you to attend if your schedule permits, because it's a great opportunity to obtain some training in land use planning and environmental analysis from the League of California Cities. We also provided, behind the director's report, the calendar of events and meetings of all the various events throughout the year. So this calendar was adopted by the City Council at their meeting last week, which highlights the annual events in 2020. So you can use that as a reference. With that, that concludes my presentation for the director's report this evening. I want to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and Happy Holiday season.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Likewise. Thank you.
Any final, item 11, any final commissioner comments?
Just want to thank everybody for their support this entire year. This year really flew by. We ended up had a lot of meetings, and it was good, fun, and you guys are all seasoned now, I think. So good. Thank you.
That's right. You are all seasoned veterans at this point. There's no question.
Are you hoping that that means we won't be calling you?
I believe so. I believe I'm hoping that. All right. I guess with no further comments, I can call this meeting adjourned.